Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Hey, where you been? Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I am your host, Stephen Means, and I'm joined by our texters. Get the text 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. A lot's happened over the last 10 days or so since the transfer portal opened on January 2nd. It is now January 14th as you're hearing this podcast, and Ohio State has lost 29 players to the transfer portal, and they've added 11 players to the transfer portal. And it's been an eventful week and a half, and there's probably a lot that fans want to get off their chest, and so that's what we're giving you the opportunity to do, is react to some of those things. If last week was, oh my God, we're losing so many people, what the heck is going on? This week has maybe turned into more, oh my God, we're starting to add so many people. I love where this is headed. And so we have rants from all over the place, as you know, if you've listened before, and if you're new here, welcome aboard. I try to put things into different categories as things come in, because often when I do call out for rants, I don't know how often it's just like 40 million different things that people want to rant about. It's probably falling into just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different buckets. So I try to do that this time around. What we have is this time we have the sky is falling. That'll be fun. We have this sucks. And some of the people even said outright, this sucks. We've got shifted focus and why does recruiting still matter? And then we've got everybody chill out. And then we've got our other category, because even though most of the time they fit in a couple of buckets, there are a few that maybe stand out that I thought were pretty interesting and probably worth bringing up as well. And the way I structured this, we're essentially going to do this the way Ohio State decided to do this in terms of the PR part of it, and start with the freak outs, because that's what it was for a lot of the first week that the portal was open, as Ohio State was doing a lot more losing players than they were adding players. And by the end of this pod, you'll be where you are on Wednesday afternoon, where sure, there's some things you would like to see change. There are some things that you still want answers to, but I think overall you're pretty happy with Ohio State and what they're starting to do in the portal, and maybe what your 2026 roster is going to look like. So let's start with the sky is falling, and this comes from Gabe in the 513. I have an eerie feeling about the state of Ohio State football 2027 and beyond. I think they will still have a team equipped to compete in 2026, but after Julian, Jeremiah, and others leave post-2026, I am concerned with how many players leave in the portal every year, and Ohio State missing out on some of the top in portal targets. I wonder if they're going to be able to keep up in the NIL era. Yes, they have resources for NIL, but not to the level of schools like Indiana now, or Texas Tech now, or even Oregon. They don't even have a Mark Cuban like Indiana has. They don't have oil money like Tech. They don't have Uncle Phil writing blank checks like Oregon. Seems to me like they are going to establish themselves as a Tier 2 spender in NIL, and in this new landscape, you have to be Tier 1 to compete for national championships year in and year out. So after the rest of this core leaves after next year, will Ohio State still be Ohio State? Or are they about to slip down and become the next has-been program like Nebraska is now, not hitting the panic button, but just feeling eerie? From the 314, oh boy, I've been calling for this. I've been so heated about everything that has transpired after losing to Miami. Why is Ohio State losing guys that are in line to be starters next year? If those are your guys, why not pay them? I'm watching Texas, Michigan, and Indiana, all whom we played next year, land big-name players, all while OSU is struggling to not only bring back its players, but can't land a single top guy in the portal. Maybe getting an OC so offensive guys know who they're playing for would help, but Day seems to be taking his sweet time with that. Ross B. York spent crazy at A&M and gets to OSU and wants to be a cheap. You know what? I can't say that word. Okay, so let's start with the OC part of this. Matt Patricia, that news didn't break that he was Ohio State's defensive coordinator last year until February 12th, 2025. So I don't think we're still a month from that. So I don't think it's a reason to be concerned that Ryan Day is not going to find an offensive coordinator. I don't see a world where it's going to be Keenan Bailey or Tyler Bowen as the offensive coordinator. I think it's going to be an outside hire. The coaches' conferences were going on Monday and Tuesday out in Vegas, I believe. So, I mean, that's typically a good place to start, looking for stuff like that. But also, like, Ryan Day doesn't have to be sped up or rushed into making that decision, because I think the way he's going to have to approach this is going to require a level of uniqueness already, because he's already got 10 assistants on the staff. Technically speaking, he already has 10 assistants who can go out on the road. You can have as many people coaching as you want now. That rule got lifted, I think, 2 years ago, but there can still only be 10 assistants on the road. And for Ohio State, those 10 assistants on the road are going to be, as of right now, Billy Fessler as the quarterback's coach, Carlos Locklin as the running backs coach, Cortez Hankton as the new wide receivers coach, Keenan Bailey as the tight ends coach, Tyler Bowen as the offensive line coach, Larry Johnson as the defensive line coach, James Laurinaitis as the linebackers coach, Tim Walton as the corners coach, and Matt Guerrieri as the safeties coach. And then, assuming that Matt Patricia is back, he'll be that 10th assistant who can go out on the road and recruit. What if on the offensive side you don't have that? What if your OC's job is, you're not a recruiter, you're a schemer. Your job is to essentially do what Matt Patricia does on the defensive side. He's just allowed to go on the road. Because, I mean, he probably just, I mean, he has the personality for it, clearly, the way this has gone so far, that the OC and DC's job isn't recruit and develop first. Their job is to take the food that the offensive or defensive coaches give them and create the meal. It's on the job of Larry Johnson, James Laurinaitis, Tim Walton, and Matt Guerrieri to go find the ingredients to give Matt Patricia. And then it's Matt Patricia's job to go make a luxurious meal. Success for the defense in 2025. It will be on Billy Fessler, Carlos Locklin, Cortez Hankton, Keenan Bailey, and Tyler Bowen to go find the ingredients to go then give to said OC to make a luxurious meal. I don't think that's that crazy. I actually think that might be the best way to go about this. It's different. We've never really seen it before. But in this world where we can have unlimited coaches now in terms of who's working with the players and who's coaching, I think that might maximize your coaching staff, and it makes sure that you bring in an outside guy, because I just think they need to be done with the guys who are already in the building who all think alike. And it also allows Ryan Day to not feel like he's got to start calling plays again, because I don't think that's good either. So from the OC standpoint, I don't think anybody should be concerned that Ohio State hasn't hired an OC yet. He didn't hire a defensive coordinator until February 12th last year. That worked out pretty well. I don't think that should be anybody's concern. In terms of the portal side of things, in terms of why doesn't it feel like Ohio State's going and getting top guys, here's what I'll say to talk people off the ledge in general about what's happening. One, Ohio State's not being cheap. I would say they're being smart and efficient with their money. You can't pay dudes who are not starters like starters, even if you recruited them out of high school. That's just not money management. No, they don't have a Phil Knight. No, they don't have what Texas Tech has. No, they don't have a Mark Cuban foot in the bill. Okay, Michigan, it sounds like they might have a person like that now, but not many people have that. Most of the people are doing what Ohio State is doing in terms of they took a patient approach to a portal. They didn't just jump and react to guys hopping in the portal in week one. They let things play out. They went through evaluations, and then they found some guys that they felt that they liked, whether it was Terry Moore, whether it was Earl Little, or on down the list there, right? They went and found guys that they liked that also probably filled some holes. If you're worried about Ohio State beyond the 2027 season, there's no reason. I don't think there's a reason to be worried about that. There's a lot changing, but part of the reason why Ohio State's been so recession-proof for the past 25 years, 26 years, is because of their ability to adapt. Whether it was adapting to, okay, what was necessary to win in the world of the BCS, what was necessary to win in the world of the 14 college football playoff, what's necessary to win in the 12-team college football playoff, what's necessary to win when an NIL happens, when the transfer portal happens, when all these different things happen. Just because they're not raining fire every 5 seconds doesn't mean that things are not going well. I don't think there's a reason to be concerned about that. Taven St. Clair's still here. And as far as I'm concerned, he'll be their starting quarterback in 2027. Chris Henry Jr. is still here. And as far as I'm concerned, he'll be heading into year 2 in 2027. Bo Jackson, I know that got crazy there for a minute, but that got figured out. So, and I'm sure they'll get figured out next year too. Like they have not lost people who are consequential yet. I think what they've lost right now is people that you've known and you have built a level of like understanding of who they are, right? There was almost this with college football, a natural progression to things, right? Okay, you land a 5-star recruit in year 1. It's like, oh, okay, that 5-star is doing special team stuff. Okay. He flashes a little bit in those early season games when you're blowing out the FCS or the group of 5 opponent and you got to see him. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then you check in on them in spring going into their second year. It's like, okay, they sound like they're right on schedule. And then they pop off as a sophomore, and then their junior year is like an awesome money year, and then they're out the door, right? But it felt for a long time like there was a conveyor belt of that. That's not college football anymore. It's unfortunate in some ways that that's not college football anymore. But at the same time, it's created a level of parity in college football that wasn't there before, right? Beforehand, it was just Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia and Florida when Urban Meyer was there and Texas when they were humming and USC when they were humming and Michigan and Penn State. It was just teams who just stockpiled talent. And that's why they were so much better than everybody else. Because what you would see in football games is over time, talent would win out, right? Okay, a team like Indiana, they could keep up for a quarter and a half while you're still playing with just your starters. And then all of a sudden you have to lean into your depth a little bit. And Indiana's backup defensive end is a guy who is a 2-star recruit who maybe he's something, maybe he's not, while Ohio State's backup defensive end is going to be the number 7 pick in the NFL draft one day. This talent is more spread out now. And so I think it's just kind of shortened the gap. It's allowed a team like Indiana, who still is not playing depth, by the way. They have mentioned it multiple times in the games they played in the playoffs. They're only playing like 13 guys on defense, and maybe even less than that on offense. So not less, because you start 11, but you understand what I'm saying though. It's not like they are a good frontline team, and that's what Kirk Cignetti is building. But that's also what you see Ohio State starting to build. They are trading in that potential. They are trading in some of that depth for proven talent. Because you know Aaron Scott and you see 5-star by his name, when he walks out the door, you're like, what the heck is going on with Ohio State? But if you take away the stars, and I just threw up the resumes of Bryce West versus Earl Little and didn't throw names on them, you would choose Earl Little's resume every single time. If I threw up the resume of what Fahim Delane has done so far in his college football career, I know it's only 1 year, versus what Terry Moore has done in his college football career, blindly, you would take the resume that would then belong to Terry Moore. And that's not saying that Bryce West and Aaron Scott and Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham, depending on what happens there, and on down the list there, and Jarquez Carter. It's not saying that those guys aren't going to turn out to be really good football players one day. They maybe will, but they maybe won't, right? They are still ideas. They are still potential. And in this world where you have to win now, you can't stockpile talent. You can't go, it's okay, we'll take Eric Mensah as a guy who maybe might take a little bit of time to develop, but he can develop in the background and just be depth for us. And if it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You can't bank on that anymore. Not when you're paying for it, and not when you have to win now. Not when the talent is getting as spread out as it is now. You can't afford, literally and figuratively, to have that sitting on your bench. And I think the unfortunate part of it isn't the fact that Ohio State's going to fall off a cliff. This is still going to be Ohio State. So, Gabe, you mentioned, is Ohio State going to establish itself as a tier 2 spender in NIL? No. I think they've shown that when it is needed, they'll pay it. They had no problem getting Caleb Downs. They had no problem getting Jeremiah Smith. When it came down to make sure you locked in Chris Henry Jr. after Brian Hartline left, you locked that in. Remember the 2024 class? Quinshon Judkins wasn't cheap. Seth McLaughlin wasn't cheap. Will Howard wasn't cheap. Julian Sand might have been cheap then, but he's not cheap now. And you haven't heard anything about him potentially leaving. Jeremiah Smith just flat out came out and said, I'm not going anywhere. You think that was cheap? It's you just have to be smart with your money. Because even the schools who, sure, Texas Tech and Oregon, if it feels like they're just throwing money at everybody, that doesn't mean it's going to work. It still has to work. That guy still has to turn into something. I think when you're used to living in the world where it's like, oh, Corey Parrish is in the transfer portal, Corey Parrish better be a Buckeye. Well, it's not always that simple. Because I don't know if for sure, because Terry Moore's coming off an ACL, which is unfortunate, but he was a dude in 2024. I'm not 100% sold that Terry Moore is Corey Parrish is significantly better than Terry Moore. I'm not sure about that. I just know that Terry Moore was a guy Ohio State recruited out of high school, tried to flip from Minnesota, and it didn't work. And you've gotten to see Corey Parrish, and you know the story behind that. So when Corey Parrish hops in the portal, it just feels like, oh, that guy needs to be a Buckeye because you almost had him as a recruit. You better get him on the back end. And that's not always how that's going to work. I think the most important thing, and I think the last 3 pods, Monday, Tuesday, and today's, I think that's the best way that we can kind of like present that information, is that there is a plan. It's not always going to be quick and like, oh, you're just going to hop on things. Sometimes it's going to require a level of patience, whether you're talking about Ryan Day finding his next offensive coordinator, or you're talking about Ohio State starting to go on a run for transfer guys. All of a sudden, like a week ago at this time, I could have understood, like, hey, man, you're not adding guys in the portal and you lost 29 guys. Okay, well, they've already placed half of them. Well, not half. They got 11 guys in the portal. It's a pretty good portal class so far, whether you're talking about Terry Moore, whether you're talking about Kua Russa or James Smith, or you're talking about the 2 tight ends that they brought in, or you're talking about Devin McEwen, who I think provides an element Ohio State didn't have last year in terms of, I thought Brandon Ennis was a reliable receiver and he was a good receiver, but he wasn't explosive, and you need an explosive guy in that slot. And I think pairing that with what Jeremiah Smith brings you on the outside and what Chris Henry Jr. might be able to do this year, I think that's quality. I think John Walker, that is a case of a guy where you recruited him out of high school, you didn't win the battle then, but you won it on the back end, and John Walker's a pretty good football player. And if bringing in John Walker and James Smith costs you Jarquez Carter in this climate, I think you have to take that. I think you have to be cool with that. When a few years ago, you probably would have just said, you know what, we're going to trust the development of Jarquez Carter and let that turn into something. I don't think you can trust the idea of a guy nearly as much anymore. You have to go get guys who you know can do it and have shown you that they can do it. But overall, I don't think you should be worried about Ohio State's ability to continue to adapt, because they wouldn't be in the position they are in right now had they not shown for the last 26 years across 3 different head coaches the ability to adapt. From the 704, my rant simply, why isn't Oregon hemorrhaging talent like the Buckeyes? Is it because they have a better front office? No, it's just because Oregon's season went a little bit longer. Ohio State's lost 29 guys to the portal. Oregon's lost 27 at the time that I'm recording this. Ohio State's brought in 11 transfer portal guys. Oregon's brought in 9 at the time I'm recording this Tuesday evening at about 6 o'clock at night. It's happening to everybody. This is the sport now. No one is just holding on to talent now. And what Indiana is doing, part of the reason they haven't lost a bunch of guys is go look at Indiana's recruiting classes that Kirk Cignetti inherited. There's not an Aaron Scott sitting on the bench waiting his turn. There's not a Mylan Graham sitting on the bench waiting his turn. There's not a Jarquez Carter sitting on the bench waiting his turn. There's not a Fahim Delane going into his second year thinking he's going to be a starter, and all of a sudden Ohio State wants to bring in a couple safeties, and now he's questioning that, and so he hops in the portal. That's the thing here. Indiana isn't suffering one side of it because they don't have the guys that would fall under the suffering part of it. Let's see what happens. If Indiana gets this thing rolling from a recruiting standpoint, let's see if he starts losing guys going into their second and third year who are looking around and going, okay, I don't see an opportunity. Or they're saying, hey, I want more money because I think I'm going to be a starter. And if Kirk Cignetti looks at them and goes, sure, we think, but you haven't won a job yet. That's not, Indiana doesn't have that problem yet. Ohio State has that problem right now. Oregon has that problem right now. Tennessee's lost 22 guys through the transfer portal. Texas has lost 25 guys to the portal and brought in 15 guys through the transfer portal. Notre Dame hasn't lost nearly as many. They also haven't brought in nearly as many. So I promise you, this is not just an Ohio State issue. This is any team who for the last 5 or 6 years especially has had a significant amount of a talent advantage is feeling the impacts of this to some extent. No one has recruited the way Ohio State does. So when they lose guys, they're just going to be louder names. It doesn't mean that they're losing more than everybody else. They're just losing names that you know. From the 704, OSU staff seems to be heavily focused on defensive players in the portal. Shouldn't they be prioritizing and supporting the right side of the offensive line? Is there not a single right guard or right tackle in the portal? Shouldn't they be looking to replace Tyler Bowen after seeing the regression of the lineman who played on the national championship team? Isn't Bowen also to blame for absolutely terrible evaluations of Ethan Inyawa and Philip Daniels? And there's a couple other offensive linemen, ones that I'll throw in there as well. From the 775, can't understand why we have fallen behind in offensive line recruiting the last few years. For a program such as Ohio State to not be a premier choice is beyond me, nor management not making it a priority. Why wouldn't a 5-star offensive lineman not want to block for Sands, Smith, Jackson, Henderson, and Judkins? Plus, Ryan Day needs to get out of the play calling business. Only way we will win another natty. I agree. Ryan Day didn't want to have to call plays. I think the circumstances just created that world. Let's start with the Ohio State offensive line. Should they go find somebody in the portal? I was having this conversation with one of our texters, 614-350-3315. The portal is just not the place you want to go for offensive linemen. Like, at all. And it worked getting Josh Simmons as a guy who maybe was a little misevaluated by coaches coming out of high school, but we were also still coming off COVID. But also, he was one of the most penalized offensive linemen in the country when he got here. And it wasn't shiny, and it wasn't pretty. And I promise you, nobody was going, heck yeah, Josh Simmons. That's who we got. So the fact that that worked out is not the norm for the transfer portal. Now, it's not supposed to be as bad as it was with Ethan Inyawa, where you gave that guy all that money, and it's not that he wasn't your starting left tackle. He wasn't even playable for you, even though you had multiple injuries at some point during the season. That's not supposed to be that bad. So they've had both sides of the extreme, but they've also had Seth McLaughlin, right? But that's the starting center at Alabama for multiple years who just maybe just needed to press the reset button on his career. There's not that always in the portal. You know, Jonah Jackson, who's the older fifth-year graduate transfer, those guys are not in the portal because why would they be? They're starters. A lot of the guys you see in the portal you're not finding Paris Johnson. You're not finding Donovan Jackson. You're not finding those guys. You're not finding Luke Whippler. You're not finding, Harry Miller, who was, I think, an excellent football player. Obviously, life got in the way there. You're not finding Josh Myers. You're not finding Wyatt Davis. The fact that Jordan Seaton is in the portal right now was probably always the end game, given where he chose to go to school. And obviously the Colorado thing for Deion Sanders hasn't necessarily worked out in terms of wins and losses. Obviously you would maybe, I guess we'll see what happens with Julian Lewis as their quarterback next year, but there's a chance that maybe their best days were behind them in terms of what they were able to do with Shador and what they were able to do with Travis Hunter winning the Heisman Trophy and winning a bunch of awards. They also had a bunch of other guys who I think ended up playing on NFL rosters, one of which is a starting wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers, whose name is escaping me right now, so I apologize for that. But you're not going to find that. There's a lot of positions in college football where you can fix your issues in the portal. The offensive line is not going to be one of those issues. And it's not just an Ohio State thing. Ethan Inyawa went raw here. Isaiah World from Nevada did end up being a starter for Oregon, but he wasn't great. So it's not worth it. If Luke Montgomery, Philip Daniels, Ian Moore, Austin Cerebell, Josh Padilla, if any of them were in the portal right now, that's who Ohio State would be going to get. Those guys are not in the portal. So that's why it's just not a place to go. It's one of those positions where if there's a dude in the portal, it's a guy like Jordan Seaton where the price is going to be super high. And that's once every so often that a Jordan Seaton hops in the portal, and you probably could have seen it coming when he was coming out of high school. Everybody else who's an offensive lineman in the portal right now is probably the Ethan Inyawa description of it's a guy at a smaller school trying to work his way, trying to take a jump, or it's a guy who can't get on the field where he's at, and he's looking to go somewhere where he can start. So from that standpoint, it's just Tyler Bowen's got to do a better job. I think for all of his flaws, Justin Fry was a heck of a developer. The fact that you shouldn't have to play your 9th offensive lineman. But the fact that they were down to their 8th and 9th offensive lineman by the time they got to the portal and they still excelled is a kudos to Justin Fry. The fact that he didn't have enough people in the room is where Justin Fry went wrong. The recruiting aspect of it is where he went wrong. But the development, he was good at it. So, like, from that standpoint, I know it's an annoying answer to hear, but it's that simple. Tyler Bowen's just got to do a better job at developing those guys. And there's no excuse this year because a lot of those guys have played a lot of football for you at this point. So if they're not ready to go when Ohio State plays Texas on September 12th, when they play Oregon, or when they play Michigan, or when they play Indiana, that's on Tyler Bowen to do a better job at that. I don't think Ryan Day was going to let him go after 1 year, but he's just got to do a better job. In terms of, isn't Bowen to blame for the absolutely terrible evaluation of Ethan Inyao and Phillip Daniels? I thought Phillip Daniels was fine. I don't think he was bad. I just think he was fine. But also, Tyler Bowen was not here when they landed Ethan Inyao and Phillip Daniels. Justin Fry was technically still here when that happened. So, like, even then, it's not still to blame. To the point about, I just don't understand why the recruiting has gotten so bad, I can't figure it out either. And I'm still not sure, maybe our expectations for the position in terms of talent acquisition is maybe a little skewed because all the other spots seem to be able to go out in the country and at times go get elite players, right? Brian Hartline did it better than anybody else here. I mean, Tony Alford, for all his flaws, he did get Travion Henderson here, right? Carlos Lachlan is in a dead heat for David Gabriel Georges, the star running back in the 2027 class, I believe. Keenan Bailey has went out and gotten dudes before. The quarterback recruiting is the quarterback recruiting. Larry Johnson continues to show it, right? I mean, DJ Jacobs is committed right now. We'll see what happens over the next year, though, because I don't think you could ever really hold your breath until the guy signs. And even then, as this portal class is showing us, until that guy is playing football for you, then I don't think you can ever really completely let go of the rope in terms of your anxiety about a player. I mean, Tim Walton's got Devin Sanchez on the roster right now, and he played a lot last year, and he's going to be a starter this year. Matt Guerreri went out and got Blaine Bradford from LSU territory, literally. He's from Baton Rouge. I mean, we see what James Laurinaitis is doing as a recruiter. Riley Pettijohn and TJ Alford might be awesome. Sincere Johnson, I know he's in your backyard, but James Laurinaitis is proving it. It's just the offensive line, regardless if it's Greg Stradrawa or if it's Justin Fry, or even now with Tyler Bowen. I think Tyler Bowen did a better job. Obviously, Sam Greer, I think he might be a dude. But just the offensive line recruiting here has just been so interesting. And I'm not sure if maybe we've been looking at it through the right lens. So that's something that I think I want to dive into. Of like, why is it so hard to recruit offensive linemen who are not from either Ohio or in a touching state? Why is that so difficult? And I think that would be an interesting thing for me to try to dive into this offseason at some point. Let's take a break. That's The Sky is Falling. So we're going to go a little less extreme with a couple other categories when we come back from the break here on Buckeye Talk. And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. It's Stephen Means and the Texter, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99. After that, it's a Rants Pod. We've moved on from The Sky is Falling to This Sucks. And I think the This Sucks part is just, it's less about Ohio State and more about the state of where college football is right now. From the 419, this sport was in a pretty good place from 2014 to 2019. Conferences mattered. Rivalries mattered. The conferences weren't bloated with teams that didn't make sense. Players didn't leave every year. This sport has been ruined and possibly beyond repair. I know this is a pessimistic take, but it's genuinely how I feel. From the 614, I'm sad. Relationships and knowing these kids from day one has been the best part of college football. The fact that they may use us and leave the next year stinks. I don't want to lose what makes college football great. Cheering for the guys who develop and start, following recruiting. We need to keep what we have as much as possible. We need a kicker, please. Yeah. And we need rules. It's not realistic to operate without rules that can be enforced. Just fix this ASAP. And get a kicker. Quick side note, I promise you there will be a kicker on the roster by the time Ohio State starts spring practice. I promise that. It would be weird if there's not. I promise you there will be. From the 513, college football sucks now, and I think there will be a ton of turnover amongst high-end coaches. They do not want to deal with this crap. I do wonder that. But at the same time, that's what the money's for. That's what they get paid. They get paid a lot of money to deal with some of this stress. From the 614, it feels like college football absurdly really broke open this year. Not great when, as a fan, you don't even know what to care about in terms of recruiting and team building. The fact this all stems from courts essentially saying CFB can't enforce anything is ridiculous. Is if the same logic were applied to pro sports, courts would rule a salary cap illegal. That combined with no real person in place to have the best interest of the sport, it feels like the game we all know and love could be slipping away entirely and be ruined forever. From the 845, been ranting for a week, but here goes the core issues. This has to change. 1, around 30% of the kids are in the portal. 30%, how is that sustainable? 2, things are completely out of whack. We need rules to protect the game and the kids. 3, kids are getting advice from who knows who. That's dangerous. 4, we need certified agents so these kids get real responsible guidance. 5, without changes, this system is a disaster waiting to happen. From the 419, here's my rant. I hate the portal. I hate that kids want to leave OSU for a few extra bucks and an easier path to playing time. I understand it, but I hate it. I love OSU. I graduated twice from there. My brother graduated from OSU. So did my parents and grandmother. I proudly take my kids to game and walk them around campus. I always felt a kinship with Buckeye athletes that we had a shared experience as OSU students that has been destroyed. I'm probably naive. College football players don't have a college experience like normal students, and the pay-to-play thing has been going on for a while, but this year it has intensified, and I hate it. A couple of more. From Mark in Orville, if this trend continues, they're going to kill the cash cow known as college football. I'm 58 years old and a lifetime Ohio State Buckeye fan, but I gotta say, this current scene of college football is just killing me. No loyalty, unrealistic expectations of players, unlimited transfers, it's just ridiculous. I'm not throwing in the towel just yet, but I am throwing up my arms and screaming, enough already. It just seems like the sport is out of control, and I'm not sure there is anyone willing or who has the power to save itself from imploding. The whole calendar thing is so messed up. It's just making me very agitated. I think I need to start caring less. I printed off the roster and had at least 80 players' numbers and names memorized by the first game. I'm a huge fan. Guess I feel somewhat betrayed by all these players, now moving to different colleges to play. Anyway, thanks for the opportunity to rant. That was beautiful. That was just, you just spoke from the soul, Mark. And you got the entire point. I just think, and maybe this is just me getting older, because I'm over 30 now, and maybe this is a bit of a back in my day type of statement to make, but I think college football, college sports in general, there is a tribal element to it, because it does feel like you play a role in it as a fan in some ways, right? That you can't really do with pro sports because they're professionals, right? It is just a job. And so I think you've been kind of trained over the years to wave the flag for the team and enjoy the players while you got them. Now, of course, every so often, there are players who are around for the long haul, which is why you have things like retired jerseys and Ring of Honor and all these different things. But overall, it's more about just rooting on your team. And in college, it's not supposed to be like that, right? In college, you learn about these kids as recruits, especially as the recruiting coverage has become a bigger and bigger thing every single year. You learn about these kids when they're 15, 16 years old. Maybe they commit early. You follow their recruitments. You follow their stories. You follow them on the way to college. You follow their come up, and eventually it pays off with them getting on the field, and then one day they end up on the NFL draft, right? You look at a guy like C.J. Stroud, like that was fun, right? You learned about him as a recruit and how his story of maybe being a kind of unsung guy for a long time who used the Elite 11 experience to kind of jumpstart his recruitment to a level it wasn't at, and Ohio State got involved, and all the receivers are calling Ryan Day going, yo, you guys need to recruit this kid. And then he ends up being a Buckeye. He sits behind Justin Fields for a year, and then he comes here, he takes over as a starter. And, yeah, there were ups and downs along the way, but then he ends up being the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. And you feel like, man, like you like kind of sent the kid off, right? You watch the kid grow up a little bit, right? You take a kid like Jack Sawyer, who was 15 when he committed to Ohio State, and all that time and all those ideas, and it turned into something. And did he turn into every bit of what people thought he would be as a 5-star recruit? Probably not, but who cares, right? His story was just as cool as, everything else that went into it. And at the end of the day, this was a talented kid from Ohio who stayed home to play for his home school and did good. He won a national title, and he gets to wear that for the rest of his life, right? You look at a guy like Bobby Carpenter, who's like always around the program now, and it's like that's an Ohio guy who did well as a player and then went off to the NFL, and now he's back, and he's good everywhere in Columbus. And that's the type of world that like Jack Sawyer gets to live in, and Ty Hamilton gets to live in, right? And Taven St. Clair one day might get to live in that if this goes the way we think it's going to go, right? Troy Smith, Ted Ginn Jr., Anthony Gonzalez, these are Ohio kids who went to Ohio State and made something of themselves, and now it's like they're just hometown heroes. And I don't think that will exist to the same level anymore. But even the guys who aren't hometown heroes, right? Look at Jeremiah Smith. I mean, how stressful was that year after he committed and wondering if he was going to flip and he was going to do that. And now he's turned into this. And then after next season, he's going to go off to the NFL. It's like, yeah, man, like the concept of developed here meant more back then. And I don't know if it can mean the same. And it's not just like development as a football player. It's development of like young people who are 16 when you meet them and 22 when you send them out the door. And I think that's gone. Like the tribalism is gone. It's a lot more like the NFL where it's like I care as long as he's in my roster and he's wearing the jersey I cheer for. But for all you know, the guy might be an impact player for you one day, and then the next day he's playing against you in a rivalry game, right? As we're recording this right now, Mylan Graham has committed to Notre Dame. I know there was a chance that maybe he might come back to Ohio State. That obviously has not worked out. He's headed to be a Fighting Irish. So they're two dudes. Think about it like this. Two of Ohio State's backup receivers from 2025, if Ohio State plays Notre Dame in a college football playoff game, are going to be starting for the Fighting Irish potentially when you play them. And those guys were two dudes that you looked at and went, they're supposed to be a part of our future. We were invested in them as recruits. Brian Hartline was the first kid to offer Mylan Graham. I was there the day he got the offer. He was going at it with Jermaine Matthews in a one-on-one situation. It was a heck of a day for that camp. I remember that story. And him committing and the idea, hey, maybe he's like the next Garrett. All these different things, all that investment you put into him, and it's like doesn't matter at the end of the day. Quincy Porter committed to Ohio State instead of going on a Michigan visit. That was like part of his story. And like now it doesn't matter because 12 months later, after he gets here, he's gone. He spent more time as an Ohio State commit than he's going to do as a Buckeye. Mylan Graham spent more time committed to Ohio State than he's ever going to spend having an impact role for Ohio State. And I think that sucks. I think that sucks for college football. I think it sucks because there's no rules in place. There's no structure. It's just things happening. And there's going to be plenty of people who do go into the portal and they're not going to find a new home because you're right. They got bad advice from somebody, or they just thought like, hey, I'm getting this, but I want this. I want this role, or I want this amount of money. It's just, it's I feel like college football is losing its soul a little bit. I feel like college basketball has already lost its soul a little bit, which is why it's so cool seeing some of these freshmen right now. H.A. DeBonsa, the kid from Kansas, Cameron Booster. These are like young, and they're going to be gone, though. They're one-and-done players, so you can't really build with them either. But like college basketball has turned into transfer portal and then go get kids from overseas. And so you're looking for, okay, well, where's the cool story of the kid who grew up wanting to play for Illinois because he's from Illinois? Right? Where's the kid who, grew up in North Carolina and, wanted to play at NC State one day? Can he do that now? Probably not, right? Where's the young California kid who grew up wanting to go to UCLA and play basketball? Probably can't do that now because you're only going to take the best of the best and you're going to take transfer portal 22, 23, 24-year-olds and you're going to take kids from overseas. Football doesn't have to worry about the overseas element of it, obviously, but I don't know, like, what about that quarterback who probably grew up thinking he was going to be Alabama's quarterback one day? And if this were 5-10 years ago, you'd take a chance on him and see how he develops. But instead, now you're not going to do that. You're just going to grab a portal guy. You're just recycling transfer quarterbacks. Dan Lanning has been at Oregon since 2022. He has yet to start a quarterback that he recruited out of high school and signed and developed out of high school. He's gone from Bo Nix, who transferred from Auburn, to Dylan Gabriel, who transferred from UCF and then Oklahoma and then Oregon. And then they almost signed Dante Moore, but he went to UCLA first, and now he's here. Maybe he might be gone. Maybe he's back after this year. And then regardless of what happens, the next guy up for them is Dylan Raiola, who started his career at Nebraska after first committing to Ohio State and then flipping to Georgia and then flipping to Brown. Like, it's just it's a lot to keep up with, and I understand that. And I think it can be frustrating to feel like there's an element of this sport that matters so much that you can't care about anymore because you're going to drive yourself crazy. Because you're going to... Even the DJ Jacobs, like I talked about him earlier, it's like, oh, man, it's great that Larry Johnson picked him up. Okay. Is he going to sign in December? Okay, he signed in December. Is he going to hop in the portal in 12 months after he signs? So, like, why should I care? I understand that. I understand why you should care. I think in terms of recruiting, the things you should care about now are how Ohio State goes about constructing its roster, not necessarily who they do it with. And then once the ball gets kicked off, every September, you can care. And actually, you can start caring in the spring because there's no spring portal window. So once this portal window closes on Friday, wherever you are, wherever you end up, that's where you're going to be for the next year. So once spring practice starts, that's when you can start caring about the who. In the meantime, I would suggest you care about the what, the where, the why, and how. And you can worry about the who later because the who changes every 5 minutes in this sport. Couple other recruiting ones from the 937. I'm not sure if this is a rant, but more of my opinion. That could be a rant. A rant is just like it's just long-winded. That's what I am. I'm long-winded. In a new age of transfer portal and NIL, I have decided that once the roster is set, those are the players I'll be rooting for. I am no longer getting caught up in recruits changing their minds or players looking for bigger paydays for themselves and their families driving their decisions. I want Ohio State to field the best team possible, but I also want the young men involved to profit as much as they can. So I wish all the players well, and I hope OSU has a national title contender next season from the 215. The loyalty which made college football so great is gone. At this point, you should only recruit players out of high school that you believe can make an impact their freshman year, then dedicate all your time after the season, keeping those players around and getting great players in the portal. What's the point in recruiting anymore if there is no loyalty? From the 440, not so much a rant, but more of a discussion topic. How long before we see teams try to get all recruits and transfers to sign multi-year deals? It doesn't seem to make sense anymore to throw a bunch of money at a 5-star high school recruit to come sit the bench year one just to have them jump in the portal after the season. Locking in guys into 2 or 3 year deals would ensure that you at least get some return on your investment. Guys like Quincy Porter and Jamie French come to mind. Quincy Porter, who was at Ohio State and is now at Notre Dame. Jamie French, who spent his freshman year at Texas and is now at Michigan for his second year of college football. To the 215's point, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think Ryan Day probably agrees. And I think Ohio State overall might agree. And so what you might see is Ohio State signed 28 guys this year. I would knock off 10 of those going forward. I think if a class is between 14 to 18 guys and then you offset in the portal, and that way you're only bringing in guys that you 100% believe can have an impact for you, which means Devin Sanchez can stay. Jarquez Carter had a small role this year, so maybe you can get him. Nate Roberts played a lot of football. Even if we all hated the fullback role, he played a lot of football. Okay, you would have signed him out of high school under this new concept. Bo Jackson, Isaiah West, you would have signed them out of high school with this concept. Riley Pettijohn and TJ Alford had roles on special teams, so you'd keep them. Maybe Fahim Delane as well, because, again, that one was more about they're bringing in portal guys, so I don't know if they can keep them. Everybody else, though, offensive line may be a little bit different because even at the NFL level, a lot of times offensive line can be a developmental thing when they get there. So, like, especially skill positions, if I don't think you can help me immediately in some way, shape, or form, whether it's on the side of the ball you play on or at least on special teams, it's probably not worth the asking price anymore. So, I will not be shocked if Ohio State is, like, cutting its class in half in terms of what they brought in this year in comparison to what they might bring in for the 2027 class. In terms of signing multi-year deals and all those other things that are logical that every other professional sport in this country seems to have figured out except for college sports, that would require a collective bargaining agreement. That would require the adults in the room being the adults in the room and not just letting the sport run amok. There's a lot of things. I don't know. Just follow the model that you send your players to after this. You know, the NFL's got this figured out. They're not perfect, but they've got this figured out. The NBA's got this figured out. It's not perfect, but they got it figured out. And they have collective bargaining agreements. And they come to the table, the players and the owners and the league, and they figure this stuff out. And every so often, it might take a little bit of time to figure it out, which is why the NBA has had 2 different lockouts in my lifespan. So, like, yeah, sometimes it can take a little bit more time. We're seeing that in the WNBA right now. But the point of the matter is, you make rules, you have CBA, and you have structure. This is what no structure gets you. Free-for-all for 2 weeks. So the moment we decide to stop like just letting it be a free-for-all and add structure and actually have adults in the room and acknowledge that they're not just student athletes, they're employees, because that's part of the problem here, is that nobody wants to acknowledge the obvious, and that college athletes are employees just as much as they are students. The sooner we do that, the better. And I think if we do that, some of this stuff might just start figuring itself out. Let's take our final break, and then we've got Everybody Chill Out and a couple others that I just wanted to hit here on Buckeye Talk. And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means in the texter, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. I was, I don't want to say it was negative, but it was just, it's understandable frustration and freaking out about what the heck is happening with your favorite team and your favorite sport. But there's also some people who have maybe already gotten to the other side of that. And this is where Everybody Chill Out comes into play. From the 419, the transfer portal has been total chaos, but I also don't think it's because it's cause for everyone to freak out. The chips will fall where they may, and we'll be playing football again in late August or early September. I follow recruiting and transfer portal as much as the next guy, but people need to chill out. If worse comes to worse, and Ohio State will learn a lesson and make the quick pivot that they always have made. Ohio State didn't win a national championship for 30 years, and it's still been considered the unkillable program. If that can't kill a program, nothing ever will. People, including myself, think that they know how to run a football program. They don't. Everyone was freaking out until yesterday when we had a great day of people transferring to Ohio State. They were talking about Tuesday and Monday. We've all become so impatient that the moment something doesn't happen immediately, everyone freaks out. For every Buckeye fan, stay off of social media if you're getting so worked out. I don't know. Like, we tell people to stay off social media. We tell kids that a lot. It's like, man, it's part of our lives. It's part of our lives. Just, have your moment, but also it's okay to regulate yourself too. I have to do it too, because there were definitely some guys I lost where I was like, what the heck is going on? And then it's like, oh, well, that's what's going on. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. From the 314, my rant, the armchair quarterbacks who think they know more than the coaching staff need to stop. They have no real insight into what's going on and just stir up discontent. I won't go as far as Herb Street went, though. You won't call them the lunatic fringe? 314? Come on. I appreciate the lunatic fringe. I think it's necessary. I think every bit of college football is necessary. I think the hyperbole, both sides, in terms of the people who think there's never anything wrong and the people who think there's always something wrong, I think they're important. I think it's important for people to be in the middle and be a little bit more level-headed. That's kind of my job, to be the level-headed person and get those answers and get the information that's necessary, but also speak for people like our texters and people who listen to this podcast and anybody else who roots for Ohio State. So I don't have a beef with the lunatic fringe. I like the lunatic fringe. I also like the people who are on the other side of the lunatic fringe, because both of them are what make this sport so great. Because without it, the interest isn't there the same way. From the 262, Ken, the sky is falling crowd, take a chill pill and see what the final product of the transfer portal ends up being before they all jump off a bridge. Is it ideal that Ohio State is losing so many backups to the portal, especially highly rated guys? No. Are they going to do something about it? Yes. Let the proverbial hand play out before losing our minds. That's the approach I've taken with everything at this point. Because, listen, I thought Matt Patricia was a stupid hire, and boy, was I stupid for thinking that was a stupid hire. So I've reached the point of, as long as there is something in place that you're trying to execute and it makes sense, I'm willing to let it play out and see what happens. From Todd, Michigan, sir, my rant about the transfer portal losses was locked and loaded. And then I thought about how many one that I can think of, really had a great level of success. This gave me a moment of clarity and washed away most of my angst. While I am concerned about depth, will survive without them all. I will end this with humor. And he sent like the Rico is now Dr. Pepper transfer portal meme, which I love that meme. Shout out to Rico, because it is your time now. I agree with that. I would say this. Don't think Ohio State, especially since Ryan Day became the head coach, has lost a single player to transfer. Even before he became head coach. I do not think Ohio State has lost a single player to transfer since Ryan Day first showed up in 2017 as the quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator, and then took over as the head coach in 2019, that they have lost, and they have absolutely missed that guy. Was Joe Burrow awesome at LSU? Yes. Go look at Joe Burrow's numbers in 2018 in comparison to Dwayne Haskins' numbers in 2018. It took Joe Burrow a whole extra year to turn into that. And by then they had Justin Fields, who was a Heisman Trophy finalist as well. And a couple players from winning a national title. Okay, who's the next guy who was probably a big deal? Jamison Williams goes to Alabama. It's a Biletnikoff Award finalist and a first-round draft pick. Okay, on NFL draft night, he still went behind Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And Ohio State had Jackson Smith-Njigba, who still holds the record, 95 catches for 1,606 yards in a single season. That's a school record still. Maybe JJ breaks it this year, but I don't know. Did you miss him? Did you miss Jamison Williams that year? I don't think Jamison Williams' departure is why Ohio State did win a national title that year. They didn't win a national title because Aiden Hutchinson turned into a Greek god. Maybe some sign stealing was in place, and Ohio State's defense couldn't stop a runny nose, and they couldn't run the football. Jamison Williams wasn't going to solve those problems. They lost all 4 receivers from the 2022 recruiting class. I think that Caleb Burton was back in the portal after heading to Auburn. Keon Graves hasn't necessarily turned out. And I don't want this to turn into I'm just bashing on dudes who leave Ohio State, because there's plenty of programs around the country who lose guys in the portal, and they think in that moment they've lost something great, and then they see what they've turned out to be, and it's like, oh, okay, it's not really that big of a deal. Bama losing Caleb Downs because Nick Saban retired, that's a big loss. Ohio State hasn't had that type of loss yet. And so I get it. Again, it's because there's an emotional attachment to guys that you've known for a long time. So I get it. In the moment, it seems like the world is crashing down, but I agree. Like, they have not lost anybody yet where you might miss them. Even if Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham go to Notre Dame and they're awesome, Ohio State still has Jeremiah Smith. And if Chris Henry Jr. is as good as advertised, it's not going to matter that they didn't get Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham. Like, those two have to be so much better than Jeremiah Smith and Chris Henry Jr. for you to miss those guys. Aaron Scott would need to be a Thorpe Award finalist for you to miss him. And while Devin Sanchez is just not good for you to miss him. So this is not a like, oh, they're not Ohio State anymore, so they're not good football players. No, they're still very good football players. But just because they leave Ohio State doesn't mean Ohio State is going to miss them. They can still be good football players elsewhere. Missing them implies that the guy you chose over that guy didn't turn out to be what you thought it was going to be. I do not think that has happened yet at Ohio State, and I don't think it's going to start happening this year. From the 804, I'm so tired whenever something doesn't go our way, hearing the fire Ryan Day chants. Does he drive me crazy sometimes? Absolutely. Do I wish he played faster? Of course. Do I hate losing players who I was excited to see next year? 100%. But fire Ryan Day, the guy coming off a national championship and an undefeated regular season this year, we're going to have to see a serious dip in talent, a couple of seasons with 3 or more losses, or a lack of institutional control before I get to that point. I constantly have to remind myself that Day knows way more about football than I ever will, although that doesn't stop me from yelling at him through my TV on Saturdays. So I'm just going to have to trust him unless things start to go sideways. I like to hope that the general consensus and that the lunatic fringe isn't as large as they sound. Nothing on social media is ever as large as it sounds like. It's just social media. Sloopy from the 440. Take a deep breath, let everything play out, and cheer for the boys who take the field in scarlet and gray on September 5th, 2026 is my strategy. Also, those Grandpa Cheese Barn patches on the home uniforms are going to be something to see. If those end up being what the patches are, then it was worth it. Shout out to Grandpa Cheese's Barn. And then from Kevin a displaced Columbus citizen ranting from Houston, Texas. I'm a first-time ranter, so here it is. Man, I got to be honest. It's getting hard to even enjoy an Ohio State football season anymore. Not because we're bad, not because we're irrelevant, but because the expectations done got so damn loud, they've sucked all the joy out of the room. Every year, it's championship or bust, and if it ain't perfect, if it ain't a clean run with a bow on top, folks act like the whole season was trash. Like we didn't just watch elite football for months. And what kills me is how nobody wants to celebrate anything anymore. We have a Heisman Trophy finalist. You know how rare that is? That's supposed to be a flex. That's the national respect. Instead of saying, that boy showed up, the conversation jumps straight to what he didn't do, what play he missed, why it wasn't enough. Always moving the goalposts. And don't get me started on the defense. That defense balled out, period. They showed up every week, kept us in games, gave the offense room to breathe. Folks have been begging for years for a defense with some backbone, and when we finally got one, no flowers, just nitpicking like we're sitting in a film room with a whistle. And let's talk about context, because everybody's suddenly forgetful this was supposed to be a step back year. New quarterback, changes all over the place. Expectations were, let's see what happens. And what happened? We stayed competitive, we grew, we still watched a contender late in the season. Meaningful football when it counts. Back in the day, that mattered. I guess the best way I can respond to that is say the standard is the standard. And anybody in the media will say that. I think all fans would say that. I think anybody in the Woody Hayes athletic facility would say that too. That's the standard. I don't know if championship or bust in terms of, it's not always the most fun way to approach this sport. But when it's a realistic expectation every single year, I think you just kind of get engulfed in it, right? I think you can look at Ryan Day's 7 seasons as a head coach and point to one or two decisions, and maybe things are a little bit different, right? What if Justin Fields, what if Chris Olave doesn't break off the route and Justin Fields hits him for a touchdown? Who knows what happens against LSU, right? I understand that LSU's weapons on offense were great, but Ohio State's defense that year was fantastic. And LSU's defense wasn't that great that year. I think sometimes I think we get revisionist history on some teams some year. They almost lost to Texas early in the year. And that's not me taking away from LSU. They're an awesome football team. In 2020, what if they don't have half the roster have COVID and Trey Sermon doesn't break his collarbone the second snap of the game? Maybe that game goes a little bit differently. What if Ryan Day looks at what Kerry Combs did in 2020 and doesn't chalk it up to, man, we can't break this up when we just went to the national championship game and we dealt with all this stuff. Maybe he just goes out and gets another defensive coordinator. Maybe things are a little bit different that year, right? What if C.J. Stroud was a little more ready early in the season against Oregon? What if the offensive line doesn't break down against Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo? Maybe things are a little bit differently, right? What if Jim Knowles doesn't send 0 blitzes the entire second half against Michigan and they somehow pull out that game? In 2022, what if Marv doesn't get hurt in the Peach Bowl? What if somehow they make that field goal at the end again? That wasn't Jaden Fielding. His name is escaping me. What if they make that field goal? What if in 2023 Kyle McCord doesn't throw an interception? What if the defense gets off the field in the second half and gives Kyle McCord more time? In 2024, they won a national championship, right? But even then, it's like, what if they approach the Michigan game differently? What if they didn't call offensive pass interference on Jeremiah Smith? Or what if Will Howard would have got down in time? And then this year, it's okay. What if Julian Sand had more time on one more snap than he got from the offensive line? What if Jaden Fielding makes that field goal at the end of the regulation against Indiana? Right, all these different what ifs. Like, they're what ifs, but and every team can do what ifs, right? But it just feels like Ohio State's what ifs are like the difference between a loss and winning a national title, and they're very specific. So I understand the standard's a standard, and I think sometimes it can be a little bit unrealistic, and it can suck the fun out of football. But it's also the reason why you're going to get back up in August and be excited to go at it again, because you think you're going to have the opportunity. So it's both ways. Sometimes, sometimes it's okay to take a step back at the end of the year and go, hey man, regardless, this was a good season. Did we get everything we wanted? No, but it was a good season. But also, that idea, that expectation is what's going to carry you through the offseason where you're going, hey, there's no reason we shouldn't win a national title. Julian Sands in year 2, he should take a step in experience. Jeremiah Smith is here. Chris Henry Jr., Bo Jackson. We're replacing a bunch of people on defense, but like Ohio State placed a bunch of people on defense last year, and look how good the defense was. And Matt Patricia's really good at this, right? And you can come up with a million different reasons for why. And I think that there's fun on both sides of it. Sometimes when you have high expectations, it can suck the fun out of it, but sometimes it can also be the thing that gets you right back off the mat when it's time to do so. Few others before we get out of here.
AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Año nuevo, los mismos Extra Value Meals en McDonald's. Ahora te puedes llevar 2 snack wraps y papitas y una bebida mediana por solo $8. Solo por tiempo limitado. Precios y participación pueden variar. Los precios pueden ser más altos en Hawaii, Alaska y California y con entrega.
From Jordan at 614, not the biggest issue, but something that has been a growing problem in my head. Ohio State needs to distance itself from Nike. The primary reason Ohio State doesn't wear alternates or anything similar is because Nike caters to Oregon. OSU didn't wear a single non-home or away uniform this year. I can't remember the last time that happened. If Phil Knight can't set aside his affection for Oregon for the sake of his company, then Ohio State should consider moving on. I actually don't know what the contractual agreements and stuff are with Ohio State and Nike and how much longer that deal is, but I don't think it's that strong. Oregon's good now, and so it's like we're looking for all these different reasons to go at Phil Knight's like screwing Ohio State in favor of Oregon. I don't know why they didn't wear an alternate jersey this year. And that's maybe a question you can ask Ross Bjork at some point. Like, hey, man, are you planning on doing that again? So I don't know why they didn't do it. But I don't know. So I'm not going to sit here and say it as if like I know for sure. I don't think that this is something that is going to be a long-term issue for Ohio State. But I guess we'll see in terms of what they do. And especially since Oregon's coming to town. Like they wore alternates the last time they played Oregon in the regular season. Maybe they do it again this time as well. I also just think they need to pull out the traditional sleeves for every playoff game. I think needing to earn it by getting to the national championship game is a little annoying because you're not going to get to the Natty every single year. So we're just not supposed to see them. Pull them out. From the 513, not a rant, Stephen, but a longtime Buckeye Talk subscriber. You've earned the right now as the host to have our text say Stephen Means or Stefan or Andrew, not Doug Lamariz. It is your show now. Put your name on it. So I've talked to people about that, our bosses, because you are not the first person to bring that up. I don't think there's anything they can do about it on our end. I think you just have to change the name in your contacts to that. And, I mean, you can make it my name, or you can make it Buckeye Talk. You can make it dude who yells into a microphone and every so often texts my phone. You can make it whatever you want. But I don't think there's anything we can do on our end. I think that's just like I'm assuming you have either an Apple or an Android, because I think they just after a while just go, maybe this person, if it's that person enough time. And because when we originally started the tech services at cleveland.com, they were built around Doug Lamariz, Chris Fedor, Paul Hoynesy, and Mary Kay Cabot. And then after I think a year of that, that's when they opened it up to the entire beat. That's why it shows up like that. So you just might have to change that on your own. From the 818, longtime listener, first-time rant. Can someone tell me the weapons Ohio State has on offense, why it is an advantage to play slow? I mean, yeah, I get the whole attrition thing, but to always be so deliberate, never play with tempo, never try to tire out the opposing defense and put them on their heels. It's like they're playing with one hand tied behind their backs, and if everyone knows that our O-line is the weakest unit, why was Day calling all those long-time developing pass plays. Did you notice how Georgia, Indiana, Oregon all played their first offensive series like their hair was on fire? They wanted to get their players' blood pumping right away after that 25-day layoff. Just a very underwhelming performance, which was surprising. I don't know why they played so slow this year. I think I get the concept of what they're trying to do, because they did do a good job of essentially playing one less game than everybody else with how many snaps they took off of everybody's belt. But 2 years in a row, I don't know if it mattered in terms of attrition. Like, the offensive line still broke down with injuries in 2024. Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate still broke down in November and had to miss some games. So if you're doing it for the sake of, like, keeping injuries away, you still lost valuable pieces at valuable times of the season the last 2 years. I think they went too far with it. And I think the reason why they've gone so far with it is because Ryan Day has elite defenses now. And he keeps saying it, like, we have a good defense now. We don't have to push the edge as much. I do not think that you having good defenses means that now you kind of just, muzzle yourself as an offense. Because now it seems like, oh, those offenses were great, but you also were only doing those things because you had to. You can still do those things. That's the thing I liked about Indiana this year is, they were holding teams like 9 points per game. They were also scoring 40 points per game. I think what happened the last 2 years is their schedules were so reasonable, right? They didn't have a marquee non-conference game in 2024, and they essentially had a season with 3 checkpoint games of Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan in 2024. And it was kind of the same thing this year. They had the marquee non-conference game, but they didn't have like another big time. They kind of avoided the other quality Big Ten teams this year. And so the marquee games, the checkpoint games, were supposed to be Texas, Penn State, and Michigan. And Penn State ended up being squat, and they approached the Texas game like they did. And in the Michigan game, like, even then, like, the 20-play drive where they were just running the ball was cool, and I think it was great for the culture and, like, kind of proving a point, but that's not who you are still. Like, I don't think that's – throw the ball. Play with some tempo. Jeremiah Smith came here because he watched what Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jackson Smith-Njigba did, and then what Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka did after that. He didn't come here to play 45 plays a game, and the only way you get him the ball is by a play-action deep shot. Use them. I agree. I think they went too far. And I think Ohio State having good defense is now Ryan Day doesn't feel like he has to do something. Because Ryan Day, a lot of his offensive approach, a lot of his approach to game planning period is like, what do we need to do to win the football game? And that's fine in terms of that Saturday. But there's a bigger picture. And you talking about how we'll turn up the gas and press on the gas when we needed to. How do you know? How do you know if you never try it? You never tried to do it. And then all of a sudden you're trying to do it against Indiana. And you're trying to do it against Miami. And you can't do it. I think you should just play football. I think they're out. There's too many smart people in the building, and they're trying to like outthink themselves a little bit by thinking way too deep about this. Just play football. Stop trying to NBA load manage the regular season. Because also, if you play more people, you play more snaps. That means you have to play more people, which means that you rotate. Whether it's receiver, whether it's corner, whether it's defensive line, whether it's linebacker, whether it's safety or running back. Like, if you're going to, like, Carlos Loughlin wants a running back by committee, well, you can't do that when you're only playing 55 plays a game. You can do that when you play 70. They went too far with the playing slow. And it wasn't always a fun watch. And clearly, it was not the right approach to take with this year. Though I do think some of it was having a young quarterback. And I wonder if having a second-year quarterback with 14 games under his belt, Ryan Day lets the leash go a little bit. Because that's another thing is, like, Julian Sand was playing a lot of older dudes. Like, Carson Beck was in his 7th year of college football. Julian Sand was in his 2nd. You don't think that showed up during the Cotton Bowl? Fernando Mendoza is a 3-year starter. Julian Sand was on start number 14. On 13 at that point. You don't think that showed up? Let that man play football. He's 4th in the Heisman Trophy voting. Let him play football. From Peter in Northwest New Jersey, hi Stephen, sending this rant for the Rants Pod. 2026 portal is insane. Never seen anything like this before. They really need to regulate it going forward. I wasn't happy with Porter leaving. In the portal, the money aspect is really messing with things. This new reality, I feel it's going to change how much I pay attention to a lot of the signing classes going forward, because who knows how many players will still be on the team in a year. I look forward to watching Chris Henry Jr. opposite of Jeremiah Smith next year and the growth of Julian Sand. I'm also looking forward to the new cornerbacks, Jordan Thomas from Bergen Catholic in New Jersey. He played really well in the All-American game this past weekend. I hope he stays to see the field in another year. The new reality of the portal must be such a challenge for Ryan Day and Mark Pantoni. When do you think Ohio State will need to hire an OC? I feel like at this point they are waiting for someone still on the NFL playoff teams. When is Day's next press conference as well? I as I said earlier, listen, we're still a month away from where he hired Matt Patricia a year ago, so I don't think anyone's concerned right now in terms of when Ohio State's going to hire OC. He doesn't have to rush to make that decision, especially if this is going to be the way I think it's going to be in terms of structure, where he's not necessarily the guy recruiting anyway. Next presser will probably be after he gets all these staffers hired and everything calms down a little bit, so there's a bigger picture and we can talk about all this, because if I was in his position, I'd probably do the same thing. To be frank about it, it's annoying. Yeah, in my position, I would like to talk to Ryan Day every day. But in his position, I understand why you want the full picture to be painted before you get in front of a bunch of microphones and answer a bunch of questions, because then you can talk about everything in full. I hope they give us all the assistants too, because we have not talked to the assistants in a while, and it would be great to get a chance to talk with Cortez Hankton, the new wide receivers coach, and get his perspective on things in terms of how he plans on running that room going forward, in a way that allows Ohio State's wide receivers to still be at the level they've been at for the last 7 years. From the 513, hey, Steven, I got a rant for you. In my opinion, changing the clock rules is more closely matched to the NFL has made the on-field product significantly worse. We get less overall plays per game, less explosives, less comebacks, and less opportunities for wild games like Texas A&M and LSU in 2018. Many of us described Ohio State as boring this year due to the consistent 5 to 8 minute drives, low possessions, and high efficiency methods we use, but this wasn't exclusive to us, though we were the slowest. We saw this across the board for top teams like Indiana, Georgia, Miami, and Alabama. Sure, there were exceptions like Ole Miss, but that play style is fading, and with it, so is one of the aspects that I think made college football more interesting than the NFL. I agree. I think it was a bad move to change the clock rules and make it more like the NFL. I get it from a standpoint of like, hey, these kids get to college, and they're living in a world where in high school and college, every time there's a first down, the play stops. I get it. It's the games were taking too long and all those different things. But it's not like the game times have gotten shorter. It just means there's more time for commercials. And the thing is, because I'm at college football games most Saturdays, I don't think I feel it the same way, because while we see the little clock that shows you how much time is left during this commercial break, and Stefan hates it, we're not really paying all that attention to it, because maybe we're looking for something on the sideline, maybe we're just talking to somebody, or we're just doing whatever, right? We're not really paying that much attention to it. But I think especially during weeks when Ohio State's not playing, I notice it more. And it's just like, you made the game shorter so you can have more times to like sell ads to people. That's not good for the sport either. I think college was supposed to have its own unique thing. It does lead to less comebacks. It does lead to less. There was almost this arcade-like style to college football with the scores and the way people play. But when you change to the NFL clock rules and you make it like this, everybody's going to end up playing the same way. Everybody's going to have good defenses, quarterbacks, run games, 12-minute long play drives. Versus, you had Mike Leach and the super spread, 4 wide receiver air raid offense. You had the spread offense. You had the power spread. You had the option spread. You had the pro style. You had the armies and the academies who were running all types of triple options. It feels like in sports in general that there used to be unique play styles all over the place, and now everybody just plays the same. And I feel like the clock rules have led to that in college football, where it's just like, is your quarterback good, and can he convert on third down? And can your defense get stops? And can you run the ball? It's boring football. I like seeing exotic stuff. I like seeing people's minds come to life in college football, and you have less time to do that in college football now. So it just turns into Ryan Day telling us about the middle eight every time we talk to him, which is the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. And yeah, that's important, but like, okay, I would like to talk about something other than the middle eight, because there's 60 minutes in a football game. So it's essentially made the other 52 minutes not matter nearly as much, because if you win those 8 minutes, you're probably going to win the football game, right? If you get the ball back with 5 minutes to go in the first half and you run all the 5 minutes off and you get a touchdown on that, and so now let's just say it's 10-10. You get the ball with 5 minutes left. You run all 5 minutes off and you score a touchdown at 17-10. And then you're going to get the ball coming out of the second half and you're going to run another 4 to 6 minutes off. So the next time the opponent touches the football, there's going to be like 9 minutes left and they're going to be down 24-10. It's not fun to watch. Maybe I just like excitement. Maybe some people do like that. And if you do like that, I respect that. It's not the football I signed up for in college. I can get that on Sundays. I didn't need that on my Saturdays. Last one from the 330. So here's my rant. My buddy who is a Tennessee Vols fan says that we are the most spoiled fan bases in all of sports. He says so because OSU is always good and we don't know what it's like to have a bad team. At first, I kind of agreed with the statement, but then I dove a little deeper into the argument. I don't think we are spoiled at all. And on the contrary, we are constantly getting let down year after year after year. Sure, we win 10 games a year, but it seems we face a heartache all the time in the worst ways. In 2012, had an awesome undefeated year and would have been playing Notre Dame in a national title game. Sanctions got in the way. For something that would have gotten laughed at today and didn't get to compete and maybe win a title. Meanwhile, Alabama won it and the SEC had serious steam at the time. One less time for us, one more for them. 2013, undefeated season, fall in the Big Ten championship game, and then lose again to Clemson in the Orange Bowl in 2014. This one went okay, other than that embarrassing loss to Virginia Tech. 2015, lost to Michigan State, who went on to go to the playoffs and get embarrassed. OSU had a ton of returning talent, and it got wasted. 2016, had the high ceiling of beating Michigan in the overtime game, but got absolutely embarrassed against Clemson. 2017, lose to Oklahoma and get flag planted by Baker, then lose to Iowa. No playoff in 2018, embarrassing loss to Purdue, get left out of the playoff with one loss. 2019, phenomenal year destroyed by a terrible targeting call and a scoop and score called back on the worst call of the century. They go on to mention essentially everything else that's happened over the year. I don't know, man. I think spoiled's not the word. It's not the word at all. But it's more of a... I'm trying to think how to put this. You just don't have the concept of how bad it can really get because it's never been that bad because you're a recession-proof program. And that's not spoiled. That's just, it's not your fault that Ohio State's had 3 really good hires in a row. So, I don't know. It's not spoiled. I don't think it's spoiled. I think spoiled is what Bama fans had when Nick Saban showed up and they won 6 rings. Like this is not spoiled. This is just, you have expectations for your football team and they meet those expectations and you're disappointed when they don't get everything that they were supposed to get. So it's not spoiled. And I don't like when people go, oh, you could be worse. You could be going 6-6. If they were going 6-6, Ryan Day wouldn't be the head coach anymore. If Urban Meyer was going 6-6, he wouldn't have been the head coach for 7 years. Jim Tressel wouldn't have been the head coach for a decade. That's just that's not going to happen because it'll get nipped in the bud very, very quickly because no one's going for that. No one's going for 9-3 around here. I remember back when the 2019 season was hopping up and Doug was trying to present this idea of maybe Ohio State goes 9-3 and it takes them a year because they got a new head coach and a lot of new pieces. And people were like, what are you talking about? That would have been a bad year. So it's not spoiled. It's not spoiled. It's like being a kid who gets all A's all the time versus a kid who gets C's all the time. When the kid who gets C's all the time gets a B, it gets celebrated. When the kid who gets A's all the time gets a B, you're almost like, hey, man, well, what's going on here? It's not, it's whatever your expectation and then standard that you set for yourself. And Ohio State has set an expectation for itself that you're a straight A student. So when you get a B, the reason why you continue to be a straight A student is because when you get the B, it gets addressed and corrected. And you get back to getting A's. And that's what Ohio State is spending this offseason doing. addressing why they got a B or a C or a D or a F or whatever other grade that's not an A in a category, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's how they're approaching building their roster, whether it's what they need to address in the transfer portal, or it's how Ryan Day goes about finding a new play caller for the 2026 season. That's what's happening right now, and there is a plan. And I think this is the third. This is 3 days in a row where I think the best way to reassure any concerns you have right now is that there is a plan. Because at Ohio State, there's always been a plan. And for 26 years, even beyond that, the plan has worked, whatever they've tried to go about in terms of execution. And so until I see that that is not what is happening, I'm going to assume that the plan is going to work and address it if it's not when the time is needed. I don't think right now is the time to be panicking. I think right now is the time to be concerned in terms of the state of the sport overall. But in terms of where Ohio State fits into it, they have a plan and they're starting to execute that plan, even if it means losing some guys that you thought were at one point in time part of the plan. Sometimes the plan is to pivot and to adapt to what the sport calls for. And right now what the sport calls for is they have to get guys who are proven that they can do it at the level Ohio State needs them to do it at, not guys who are an idea and they think have the potential to do it, especially when you have to invest in these guys financially. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Great rants pod. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll probably do more of these as the offseason is here. They won't always be rants pods. Sometimes we'll just do Q&A pods. Fun stuff coming up over the next couple of weeks here. Obviously, the national championship game is on Monday, and so we'll be discussing that and doing some Big Ten tiers next week. Once the portal closes on Friday, next week we'll do some projections in terms of who we think the two deep might look like. Ohio State has landed a bunch of guys in the portal. We've been doing videos, so go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Buckeye Talk, and we've been trying to address guys in the moment as they've happened at times with short little videos. We'll do a longer pod breaking down everybody they've landed so far for tomorrow. So Stefan and Gillis will be back for that, which is crazy. I think that's the only pod where all three of us are going to be on it this week. But yeah, that's the schedule. Portal's open until Friday at 11:59. If you're worried about why Ryan Day hasn't hired an offensive coordinator yet, don't worry about it all that much yet. Now, if we get to like February 21st and he hasn't done it yet, then we'll probably be like, hey man, what's going on here? But again, he didn't hire Matt Patricia until February 12th. And it's January 14th as you're listening to this, January 13th as I'm recording it. So as of the time I'm recording it, he hasn't hired an offensive coordinator yet, and I don't think he'll have one by the time you hear it on Wednesday. So 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For our texters, I'm Stephen Means. Talk to you guys later.